basically, yeah, all sort of throughout my childhood, sort of it's quite a tough childhood. It's me, my brother, and my sister. My mum brought us up on her own. Sort of, she struggled. There was often times where my mum wouldn't have a meal so we could have a meal, and just, it was hard growing up. And yeah, for me, sort of at a young age, I remember sort of going through certain things, and food always being that sort of a comfort for me. So yeah, sort of as I sort of grew up, went through primary school, I remember going around friends' houses, sort of going around there for dinner, for sleepovers, and like the foods and the luxuries that they used to have in their houses, and I used to think, wow. And I remember at a very young age that the food, I was like, wow, I sort of become slightly obsessed with it. And my mum done her absolute best, and she'd done her best, and like if she could treat us, she would. But we sort of didn't have that excess surplus of luxury foods that sort of a lot of my friends and sort of had. So yeah, so sort of that was where I think my initial sort of comfort of food come from. And then sort of went through school, got into high school. From a young age, I was sort of quite, a troubled teenager. I sort of ended up leaving school in year 8. And I sort of, at that time, they called it work-related learning. So I was in school 1 day a week on a Friday, in like a special, like sort of, it was like a student house for kids that sort of had behavioural issues. And I was sort of working 4 days a week, so I was sort of earning money from quite a young age. I'd done it as an apprentice, sort of plumber. So I sort of started earning money, and I used to spend all my money on food. And I just always used food as a comforter, sort of growing up. Sort of went from sort of doing that, various different jobs, then sort of ended up meeting my kid's mum, sort of 2012. Sort of ended up in that relationship for quite a long time. Throughout that relationship, it was sort of, we had a lot of ups and downs, and again, food was always a comfort. I wasn't really a big drinker. I didn't smoke. But food was sort of my go-to drug, so to speak. Sort of always battled with depression. My mental health, would be very, up and down. And I used to hate the feeling of being down, and when I felt good, it was sort of, that was few and far between. But yeah, I used to try and fight the feeling of being down. I used to beat myself up, and again, I turned to food for comfort, and sort of become obsessed with it. Then sort of, I'd say in 2016/17, relationship sort of took a sort of quite a negative turn. We ended up sort of separating. I left the family home. I ended up sort of, going from being a full-time dad, with all my kids from the day they were born, really involved as much as I could be, to sort of going to sort of seeing the kids once a week, every other weekend, sort of as per the sort of norm. And that really did, put me in a real dark place. Sort of, I ended up sort of ballooning in weight. Probably at my heaviest, I was at about 33.5 stone. And it got to the point where I just sort of, I felt like giving up. I was very much, I'm quite a big guy, I'm 6'4", and I'd like to sort of think I was sort of quite a, an alpha sort of male. That's how I felt anyway, and sort of tried to put on this brave face a lot of the time, and I'd often sort of hide my emotions, my feelings. I couldn't really speak about it very well, and I didn't really seek out any help or support at the time. I sort of thought I had a hold on things, and that sort of led me to then be in a position where I didn't really see a way out, to be honest with you, and it got quite dark for me, to the point where I made a series of videos for my children, and they were videos for, for special occasions, such as they're leaving school. their GCSEs, weddings, engagement, videos like sort of, you know, if they were feeling down and sort of needed to see their dad and speak to their dad, feel like a bit of positivity, sort of kick up the backside, or just, you know, just so they could reference it. And I made these series of videos, and with the intention of obviously taking my life. And I just thought, you know, I felt extremely selfish at the thought of doing that, but I just thought, you know, you convince yourself that they would be, as sad and as crazy it sounds, and at the time you sort of you justify it, and it seems completely logical to you, because you know you've got yourself to that point and you don't see a way out, so you think, you know what, they'll be better without me, sort of thing. So that then led me to a sort of evening, and that was probably one of my lowest points. And I, you know, thankfully, obviously, you know, what I planned, it didn't work. And from that, I sort of, it was like a sort of something switched in my brain. And almost like an epiphany, it just hit me, you know. I remember watching the videos back sort of after the event, like the sort of attempted suicide, and I remember watching the videos back the sort of a couple of days afterwards, and watching them through, and I just remember just feeling an overwhelming sense of emotion and sadness at looking at that myself. And it's the first time I've ever done anything like that, and seeing myself, because I was quite emotional in the videos, and seeing myself talk like that and talking to my children, and you know, thinking what was I thinking. So from there, I just sort of realised that enough's enough. You know, I can't deal with this on my own. So yeah, you know, and that was really a real big turning point for me in my journey, is sort of accepting how I was feeling, because you know, often as men, we are very conscious of how we're perceived, you know, to our colleagues, to family, to our partners, to our children, and that's something that I'm fully aware of. And you know, you don't want to be sort of seen as being weak. You don't want to be seen as being overly emotional, because you know, we've got to be strong. You know, a lot of the time, you know, you're sort of there as a sort of guiding light to your family and to your children and to friends and etc. So you sort of to fight that emotion is what I was doing, and I sort of always use the analogy that, you know, now, you know, I do have down days still. You know, I could have a day a week, 2 days a week. It could be sporadic, but it's for me is now identifying them days, and rather than fight against it and fight against that wave of emotion, I sort of ride that wave and I accept it, and I still get on with my day. I still do what I need to do. I still follow my routine. I still, you know, carry out my obligations as a you know, as for work, as a parent, as a friend, you know, as a partner. But I'm very now of the opinion that, you know, to talk about things, it helps a lot more than to sort of leave it and let it brew. And I think for me, especially talking to strangers, it could be someone in a coffee shop, it could be someone, you know, being open about, you know, your journey, and open about your emotions, and talking to, you know, people there in your support network, it has helped me massively. Sort of while I was going through the sort of breakup of my relationship, I was a field force engineer at the time, and like, you know, I didn't at the time reach out for support initially within my network, my line managers, Sean and Pete, and I remember there were safety days going on, so that's where you know, the level 7 and sort of a union representative would sort of go out and visit engineers, sort of, you know, just to see how guys are getting on. And I'll never forget the day where I was visited by Pete and the union representative at the time. His name was Jeff, and they come out and they met me, and I sort of weren't expecting them. I was aware they was out doing around seeing guys, but I was sort of just, you know, cracking on with my day. I was still, you know, at the time going through the breakup and the disruption I was going through. I was still coming to work, etc. Just sort of thinking I had a handle on things. No, I didn't. And I just remember it was something as simple as Pete, he asked me, so is everything okay? And I just remember breaking down at the roadside. And then from there, I sort of had a period of time off work, with the support of obviously like my work network. And yeah, that support was amazing. And obviously I wouldn't be, you know, where I am today if I didn't have that extra bit of support from work, because obviously, you know, I've got my network outside, my support network at home, family, friends, but to have that additionally in work was a real big help, because you know, we spend a lot of time at work, more time at work than we do often at home, so to have that support was sort of it was brilliant, second to none. And yeah, so that sort of was part of that sort of identifying and sort of process of healing and being able to sort of take that next step. And yeah, off the back of obviously the videos that I made and the attempt of taking my life, and sort of realising, you know, I've got control of this. You know, the mind's a powerful thing, and you know, ultimately your mind, you know, it controls every aspect of your body, so to your movement, to everything. So you need to sort of, you can't fight against your mind, but you need to work with it. And I'm a strong believer in that, and identifying your emotions and triggers, and that sort of has become part of my ethos, and that's in, you know, I've sort of thought, right, you know, let's start at how I feel about myself, which was obviously I was massively obese. I hated myself. I hated looking at myself. I felt embarrassed for my children when I take them to school. I felt embarrassed for my children for, you know, even down to taking them to a soft play or theme park. You know, soft play, I'd try my best to sort of keep up, but you know, often I was out of breath. Theme parks, I never was able to take any of the kids on rides because I was too big, so I'd have to often ask, you know, my sister or my brother to come along so they could go on rides with them. So it was just sort of like, you know, that them sort of catalysts, and then that sort of how I felt about myself, I used that as fuel to sort of start me on my journey, which I thought, right, okay, well, you know, if I start looking after my body, looking after my mind, then the rest will follow. So with that, obviously, that's when the sort of the walking come in, my diet, sort of limiting the amount I ate, getting control of that was really important. And sort of that process included support groups, working at the root cause of, you know, why I felt the way I did about food, why I felt the way about myself. And from there, obviously, that journey sort of has been going on now since sort of the gym side of things all started in 2020. And yeah, I've sort of now, the gym has become a massive part of my life. For me, it's sort of, it's been the real backbone of who I am today. And without it, you know, I won't give the gym credit for who I am, but you know, without that tool that was sort of there, always there, but now that I'm using that tool and keeping myself fit, keeping myself active, that has enabled me to fortify my mind and build up that mental resilience, you know, and that's been important as part of my journey in obviously losing weight, feeling better about myself, obviously eating healthier, eating the right foods, and yeah, with that, you know, it all sort of has a domino effect. So with the fitness, obviously the loss of weight, feeling better about yourself, it has a positive effect on every aspect of your life. So, you know, from being a father, being able to, you know, go to a theme park with the kids, and you know, the older children, the 3 older children, they're old enough to remember, you know, how big I was, and they're old enough to remember that I used to have to stand and watch. And you know, the first time been able to take them on a roller coaster, and experience that with them and see the look on their face. That was like, it was, and that was, you just, them small things, them small little things that you sort of, you take for granted, and it was like, just even now there's still things as simple as being able to, as it take my boy out for his 9th birthday, take him up for a hike up Snowdon, and this, experiencing that with him and my other son who's 10, being able to do that, and again see their joy, and they're like, they're like, Dad, this is amazing, wow, like, do you remember how big you wouldn't be able to do that then, but look how fit you are now, and and going to the school and picking the kids up from school, and the kids seeing me, and like, like their friends are like, they'll come out and they go, oh, does your dad, how strong, and they'll mention like, oh, how strong is your dad, and they'll sort of talk about me in a positive light. And as before, I sort of, as I mentioned, I felt embarrassed at the school gates, and just them small things, and being sort of kind to yourself, and this, the weight loss journey and everything, that has sort of been a real big catalyst for who I am today, and being able to sort of build up that resilience. Like, even as I still get tested. There's times, I do have, so as I've mentioned, good days, bad days, and that's normal for everybody. But it's important to talk, and it's important to sort of, look after yourself, look after your body, look after your mind, and move in any way you can. And you may not enjoy it, and you may not feel motivated to do it. And a lot of the time when I get up at sort of 4:35 a.m, I don't feel motivated to go to the gym. Motivation now doesn't really come into it. I know that if I go to the gym, the outcome is I will feel better in myself, in my mind, in my body. So it's more discipline for me now. And that really is sort of that is how I am, and that's how I sort of live my life now. Like, even more recently, when I lost my mum in December, my whole world come crashing down. 3 days before Christmas, my mum dies unexpectedly, sort of cardiac arrest. Find her sort of, dead in her bed, unfortunately, and that was something that she's just never ready for. My only parent, sort of, she was sort of my world, and she was a massive support. So without her in my life and how she was for me, I wouldn't be who I am today. She taught me so much, and so what helped me to deal with that grief, and deal with the loss of her so suddenly. But I still have to be a dad. I've got 4 children. It was 3 days for Christmas, and what done it for me was, I remember my mum seen my journey, and she would see how far I've come, and the videos that I made to the kids, I emailed them to my mum and to my brother and sister, so she knew the place I went to, and she got to see me how far I come. And these things, these moments in your life, they're going to happen. You're going to feel down. You're going to have speed bumps along the way, but you've got to just remind yourself that it's okay to feel how you feel. It's you don't fight that feeling of emotion, because if you fight it, then you will lose that battle. So you're better off to ride the wave rather than fight against it, because ultimately the wave will just crash into the rocks, and that's what happened to me, and I learned from that, and that's why when my mum did die, I did take a bit of time off work, but there was a lot of logistics and bits and pieces to sort out. But I still maintained my sort of routine of going to the gym, and I made sure that I kept my mental health in check, and reached out for support where I needed it, and spoke about it. And to this day now, it's only been 6-7 months since my mum passed away, but for me, I find talking about that, and talking about my journey, and talking about where I've been to and how far I've come, it helps me deal with that, and it's definitely helped me heal and become sort of again added to my resilience. And that's why, you know, this, you know, the walking and the hiking in particular, you know, when you're in the gym or if you're hiking or whatever sort of activity you choose to do within your sort of capabilities, you know, put your headphones on, or you know, all you're doing at that moment when you're pushing yourself physically, you're building yourself up mentally, you're building up your resilience. And for the 2 hours I'm in the gym, or for the 6-7 hours I'm hiking up a, you know, Snowdon, a mountain, or wherever it may be, is all you're thinking about is putting one step in front of the other, or you're thinking about is pushing that weight off the bar, or you're lifting that dumbbell. You're focused on that movement, you're focused on that motion, and you're focused on that moment, and that then gives you that sort of moment to think, and that gives you that clarity to sort of really, you know, hone your mind and forge yourself. And you know, there was many a times where I'd start a routine, or I'd start a diet, or I'd start an activity, and you know, I'd always sort of go around in circles. But for me, the turning point was I'd never addressed myself mentally, never addressed my emotions, and I was always fighting my emotions, and that's where I was going wrong. It's okay to feel down, it's okay to feel depressed, it's okay to feel sad, and it you know, it's okay to say, yeah, I'm depressed. It doesn't mean you're going to be depressed forever. It doesn't make you a bad person, it doesn't make you weak. You know, to be emotionally aware and be able to talk about your emotions and speak about it openly, whether it be to a friend, a colleague, or somebody you don't know, a stranger, you know, which I've done. I've joined various support groups, and to do that is strong, is strength, and that goes for everybody, you know. But that's where, you know, for me was the starting point, was identifying that, speaking about my emotions, how I felt, what I was thinking, my triggers, identifying them, what led me to identifying them, and the root causes, and building up that routine of, you know, an activity that I do enjoy. You know, it's not enjoyable when it's the winter and it's 6 a.m. and, you know, you're freezing cold, but the positives outweigh the negatives massively, especially the sort of, it's a natural, you know, antidepressant activity, you know, whatever it be, running, weightlifting, archery, cycling, swimming, whatever it be, you know. Speaking from experience, you know, I used to think, oh God, why do people do that? And why do people go to the gym? Even when COVID first came about and they shut the gyms, and I see the uproar about that, and I used to think to myself, why is everyone sort of, you know, because at that stage I was quite early on in my process, so I used to think, why is everyone sort of really upset about this? You know, they do it, you know, government are doing it for the safety of everybody. But then after sort of getting into, you know, a routine, a gym routine, activities such as walking, weightlifting, I sort of now know the importance of that and how that's helped me in my own journey. But that doesn't mean it's going to, you know, it's not ideal for everybody, but I think any activity, whatever it may be, gives you that break away from everyday life, gives you that peaceful moment, you know, just to regroup and build up that resilience. That does help, like, massively. So that sort of, for me, has been where I'm at and has got me to where I am. Yeah.